well, I'm looking forward to see how they duke it out.
It's going to be a good PvP. There's so many Protoss in the region, and their PvPs are always very entertaining, especially on Romana side, where I feel like we have some of our longer back and forth PvPs as well. And that is our first map. In the bottom right of it, we have the red Protoss for Team Exxon. He is Gerald.
And spawning over in the top left-hand side as our blue Protoss playing for Team Cascade, it is SKillous. Now, to start things off, we don't have any kind of low-ground gateway or any of that stuff, and so far it's exactly the same probe scout timings, exactly the same, well, buildings going down. The only thing that's different is Gerald's wall is what can only just be described as a bit funky.
It's a little bit, yeah. See that pylon actually contributing to the wall, as opposed to being behind it like SKillous is. So far the only difference. And we have the overall group, as I said, all these Protoss players were lined up as I was speaking on the desk. I guess things just finished up with Marine and Braddock, so Gerald has been pushed down a little bit, but remains to be seen, right? Because he could still win this matchup. I mentioned that he had just won against SKillous in one of the Open Cups, so I'm going to nod to Gerald's ability to actually win, but overall, SKillous has a better win record, and I think overall, SKillous has been pushing the envelope for PvP. You mentioned that he's going for like more of the gateway style, less about disruptors. I think a lot of Protosses are now going for that. We're kind of back to just like a +2 timing, blink into maybe an immortal, but then into charge, Archon, +2, and you hit. And then disruptors are a little too dangerous to get to as quickly as we once saw, like last year, for instance. But SKillous was one of the guys actually, I think, pushing that idea that you didn't have to go into disruptors before everyone else agreed. You didn't have to go into disruptors. So just that's really sticks out in my mind. It's why I consider SKillous at one point was the next best great Protoss, because that is really a question in Europe. You know, Showtime's still pretty much there, but then which one of these Protosses that we see in these groups is actually going to ascend to his level? SKillous seems to be on the forefront even in this season, but Gerald, he can definitely shine. He has his moments.
Both players see what they're up against, and it will be 2 Adepts for Gerald, whereas it will be 2 Stalkers to start things off for SKillous. And yeah, Gerald obviously wants to try and get these in his opponent's base and find out what's going on. Oh, look at this. Is that it? Just to stop the probe from getting in.
Yeah, I did mention this, so I'm glad to see it come into effect. So Mana did this last week in the groups, and then he also did it this week in the Open Cup. It's what prompted me to say, like, yeah, I feel like one base is kind of coming back. There you go. SKillous going for a 3-gateway robo on one base. That's exactly what I was talking about. Just the way that PvP continues to just go in a circle on the metas coming and going. So kind of back to the one base. No proxy, though. Geralt will eventually know that something is amiss. They both aren't getting nexuses, so like, hey, what's going on here? And it looks like Geralt is wary of this new PvP development, so he's going to add on his own robo.
That was cool, by the way, from okay, so the pylon on that position allows you to put a shield battery there. That's kind of cool, because I was looking at this wall, and I was like, if Rotterdam walled off in PvP, this is probably what his wall off would look like. But I gotta say, I do like that quite a bit, actually.
Yeah, I do, I as well, because even though you're not going to grab the Nexus in this situation, you still don't want to let them just contain you on that high ground. If you can start taking the fight in the natural, then that's preferable. And in order to do that, you are going to need a shield battery, because even though you are on your own way to an immortal, you're on your own way to a 3rd gateway. It's SKillous who did his build. He chose to do this, and Gerald's kind of reacting right now. So he's at a bit of a loss in the beginning, and that's what the shield battery covers.
Yeah, I mean, SKillous from remaking the shield battery, which, to be fair, he's done a super good job of like canceling it at the last second and doing all that kind of stuff, but he's definitely made SKillous spend a lot of money, has Gerald. And right now, SKillous, like, he wants to deal damage, he wants to be aggressive. He's got a much lower probe count, granted it's on one base, but also he's not really been going for any more advanced units. Like, that Daddy Immortal is by far the strongest unit. Oh, has to be careful, though.
Too bad there wasn't a second force field. Yeah. Immortal maybe could have gotten popped forward.
Now that pylon, you know, I don't like it anymore, Jess. You know, it's going to get picked off, and then No, it's fine, it's fine. But it's going to be hard walling off this weird ass wall, honestly. But SKillous, he's definitely being in the face of Gerald. And this is, I don't want to say it's exactly what I thought I'd see from these two, but I did see it as like a bit of calm against chaos here, with Gerald definitely being the calmer of the two. Stopping the probe from expanding here, but doesn't look like SKillous wants to expand at all anyhow.
I love when PvP gets like this, by the way, because your opponent reacts to your one base with a one base. It is, theoretical that you can just expand, but SKillous is really pushing the issue. He did just try and go up that ramp, at least get the Adepts in, didn't actually commit. And speaking of Adepts getting in, we actually have Gerald finally getting the Adept into the main. He's been trying for so long. SKillous doubles down on the Adept, still isn't going to shade in though.
Yeah, I don't want to say I'm surprised that he didn't shade in there, but it was like the one time that Gerald wasn't reacting. So I guess Gerald was just like, oh, well, you didn't shade in there, and that was like the best opportunity for you. Now I'm going to be on the aggressive, and an Immortal, or rather two Immortals in that Warp Prism, that is definitely an Immortal or a drop that can deal a lot of damage. And look at this. SKillous is now the one going for the Robo Bay on one base still.
That is a little surprising. I absolutely would have expected him to go for his own Nexus and a little bit ahead, right? Because he did have the contain until just 30 seconds ago. He moved away, but he just wants to win the game on one base. I don't know what to tell you. He's going to try and do it. Gerald is on his way to blink, but that won't be done for another like 40, 50 seconds, and SKillous is already pushing despite the robotics bay not being done. A little bit of harassment in the main has got to be careful about this, because blink will eventually finish. That is becoming increasingly obvious to SKillous.
Yeah, and I like that Gerald's actually hunting this down, and the Warp Prism gets picked off, and that is huge. Like, not just for this stage, like, reinforcements are going to be slower. I know he has that pile on the right side, but SKillous, meanwhile, is pouncing on the army of Gerald on the right side, but that lack of Warp Prism stops a lot of the micro as well.
One Immortal does get popped forward, so it's 1-to-1 on the Immortal counts. SKillous, though, a little bit down just in general unit count. Shield Battle on the higher ground's going to help Gerald as well. The Warp Prism micro is going to help Gerald. Everything was kind of looking good for Gerald. And as SKillous finally adds on a second Immortal, it's too late. There's nothing protecting the Immortals. They've got to skedaddle. Adepts try and get some damage done, but at this point, Gerald's Nexus is done. His Blink is going to finish. SKillous is just straight up lost the game, and we still haven't really seen what the robotics bay was for, because he canceled it, and he is going to just tap out. That's not unexpected, but kind of a wonky game. I really thought SKillous was going to play that differently after the contain.
Yeah, me too. And even though before this series, I would have said like SKillous was definitely what I felt was maybe better. That single game, I liked Gerald's game plan. I liked his play a lot more in that particular map, which it's not often that you go into a series thinking one thing and then you're just like, I'm totally flipped, I loved Gerald, how he was very calm about everything. I think he read the situation very well. And he obviously knew SKillous pretty damn well, because everything that he was doing, he was just like, okay, I'm going to go about this, I'm going to go about that. And you could just imagine him talking you through the game, just being like, yeah, now I'm going to do this because he's going to do this. I've got this shield battery on the low ground here, which I made this pylon, which was very weird with my Rotterdam wall off. But it all, like, everything was very, very cool by Gerald. And I'm looking forward to see what he does in the rest of this series now, because being 1-0 up, you saw SKillous look very frustrated there in the webcam, and like his opponent just didn't do what he wanted him to do whatsoever.
No, he didn't. And actually, I think this is just super coincidental. I was casting Mana versus Gerald on Monday, yesterday, and I think Mana literally did the same thing, if I'm remembering correctly. And what really screwed Gerald over was that he opened up like 4 Stalkers. So he went Stalker, I think. So no Adepts. Then he sent his Stalkers out and they got killed. And then back at home, he had like a Stargate, right? And it was just one of the worst situations. He had no scouting. He had no response of his own Immortal until it was too late. And I feel like he has just taken that series that happened just like 24 hours ago and just learned so much from it, because the Adepts coming out helped him scout that something was suspicious, something was off. He knows that 3-Great Robo is coming back in, so he's like, it's probably that. And he just responds with his own Robo and takes a really chill approach to it. So I don't know if it is because it happened recently, but Gerald did look really nice against it. I think SKillous is going to be no longer tempted to end the game early.
I like what you say as well, because that game, that was SKillous's strategy Like, he obviously prepared to do that kind of thing, whereas Gerald was the one that had to react to him. And we don't always talk about preparation for games and series and plans and stuff, but the fact that Gerald was rather the one that was having to react to his opponent, he's the one that looked far more calm, far more patient, and all his decision-making was very, very clean and cool, and that is always beautiful to see. Anyhow, spawning over in the top right-hand side of 2000 Atmosphere, it is Gerald.
In the bottom left, as the blue Protoss for Team Cascade, he is SKillous.
So you're good with lore and stuff. Like, I tend to know that about you, Zombie Grub. Why?
Better than a lot of other casters.
Yeah. Why is this map called 2000 Atmospheres?
Oh, okay. So I don't know if that's a lore thing, but I was talking about this, and my chat informed me that it's like the amount of, it's a way to measure how far under the sea you are, right?
Oh.
So, yeah, it is actually stating that this is underwater, even though it doesn't look as obvious as like Abyssal Reef, for instance. That was very obviously underwater.
Now that you said it, I had no idea, and now I'm looking at it, and there's freaking fish. There's a flying shark and there's fish. How did I not know this? Okay, thank you. Totally explained for me.
There you go. And that's why units float to the top, although again, not as comically as I think they did on Abyssal Reef. I just remember so many games on that map where like the Marauder would come up to your camera, as it dies and floats. But hope that happens here as well.
I do miss, the scream of a ghost, like the female ghost, and then seeing the body just fly up as well. It was like, it made it all the more sweet when I was losing games, on a good old Abyssal Reef. And oh my goodness, that map lasted for so long as well, but everybody liked it so much.
I feel like Zerg players were starting to not like it. Like little Raven pre-auto turret nerf. Wasn't that one of the maps that was really deadly for it? And I dare say one of the reasons that it got nerfed range-wise, right?
Yeah, I think so. Also, like, that era was the same time that Thor-drop Hellbat attacks was a thing. Like, I don't know if you remember the double medevac Thor-drop with the Hellbats and stuff. It was so cool. But it's also funny that this map is, like, one of the most picked maps this season thus far. And I know things will continue to change, but underwater maps, man, that's where it's at.
And they look very pretty as well. We also have the return of the Cloud Sharks. They're not on Cloud Kingdom, but still, they're swimming around. As far as this actual PvP, guys, it has not been super noteworthy. The opening units is certainly noteworthy to a degree, but no intention to one base this time around, by the looks of it. Both are setting up for that natural nexus, and just the difference of Adepts versus Stalkers. And SKillous isn't even going to add any more Stalkers onto this, which can be a little greedy if Geralt was, going for 6 Stalkers or proxying something. But if they're both going to macro, then you're going to want sentries, and then put your resources elsewhere onto army units that might not actually net very much.
This is quite a nice scout by Gerald, though, and I know he won't get to deal any damage with this, but he also doesn't lose any, and it's just good information to have. That block with the Adept, by the way, making sure that the other Adept doesn't take any damage and just keeps full health, that's very cute.
That was super clean. I like that. Well, SKillous actually has some hallucinations, or actually just sent one out, so that's the power of the Sentry. But PvP, despite having some of the most reliable scouting units, hallucinations, and observers, is still such a, what's the PG word? It really messes with your mind, Like, you can seem to see some things, and then it still ends up being a Dark Shrine hidden off in the middle of nowhere. And the timing was just ever so slightly off. But generally, seeing the Twilight Council, seeing the Forge, both things kind of saying macro game. And now it's a question of who's getting ahead in that macro game. Well, right now with the Forge actually being down, it'd be Geralt. So what is SKillous going to do? Is he actually going to try and do something more on 2 base, go for a bit of an attack prior to that upgrade?
Yeah, we'll see. When you were talking about PG word, I was like, does she mean volatile? Because that's pretty PG, but no, yes, I know exactly what you meant. But yeah, both getting blinked now. Skillous starts his own Forge as well. Robo's going down. They've both very much gone from A to B in different ways, but it looks like B is the exact same thing, which is, it's cool, right? We're getting to see a more evolved PvP, not just the one-base shenanigans kind of stuff. But yeah, this is I feel that it's a bit more into Skillous's comfort zone out of the two. That being said, Gerald, he's very quick to take third base here, but Skillous will scout it just in the nick of time with that last second on that hallucination.
And it's kind of an awkward thing to punish at this point, though. So you don't punish it. You also take your own Nexus. And so we have, kind of a rare situation in PvP where really not a lot happens. Usually you do have some little more talking points about maybe a Stargate opener first, or the Adept's actually doing some damage. And nope, not really. This is that type of game where you just talk about the slight differences in timing. So that +1 being faster for Gerald should give him the lead in this game, but it's like not even that big of a lead in the upgrade, so I'm not sure it's going to be hit timing-wise. And then if everything's kind of Gucci and even, we talk about the actual engagement opportunities. That's when it goes more around +2. Someone moves out, tries to control the flow of the engagement, and then who has a better concave. So not to look too far in the future too quickly, as we do have a slight push out here. That is usually where this thing goes.
Yeah, definitely. Nice force fields. This is right before Blink is done as well. So can he get off any of these Stalkers? 2 go down right before Blink's done, and that was a nice little catch by Gerald. And again, Skillous is being the aggressor, but it isn't really working out for him against Gerald.
It feels like Skillous is doing things that were actually very powerful when they first were being crafted or being brought back into the meta. And Gerald is like, no, I've seen this already. Like, no, I know that's what you're going to do, dude. So even just the timing of his move to the left to have those force fields was just like so perfectly timed, where what Skillous wanted to have happen was to find a slightly greedier Protoss player, one who's stuck in his natural, just defending, and one who maybe has like a couple less stalkers. And also, hoping not to be caught before his own blink is done. That was most important. Instead, he gets punished.
Yeah, that was the big thing. Like, blink not being done in time. Like, he just absolutely didn't expect Gerald to be as well prepared as he was. But lo and behold, Gerald's just playing a very solid game. Now, those 2 Adepts that he made from earlier, they are coming in very handy.
Already grabbing 4 probes. Probably going to grab maybe 6 before they die. Maybe even more, actually. Yeah, the Stalkers have to come back and body block. As 6 probes do fall, definitely worth the 2 Adepts. And Geralt just seems to be all over this game. His charge is on the way, his +2 is on the way. Things have evened up on those upgrades, but he's had a slight worker lead. Well, just recently, that's for sure, but big spike there. And he's going to put that into a faster Dark Shrine, which I think Skillous will eventually get. But coming out now, maybe Skillous won't have enough DT protection as he moves out. That could be a concern.
I know that like Defender's Advantage is a big thing in PvP because of the shield batteries, but if they fight away from them, obviously it's not that much, given that, especially in this kind of game where it's mainly gateway units. But Skillous, it feels like he's not comfortable with just sitting and waiting, right? Oh, there's a nice little catch of charge lots.
Very nice catch. I think you're right. Skillous isn't, he's not the guy who's going to sit back and just defend. He wants to take charge. And so far, it hasn't really worked out, but his army supply is still rather good. His +2 ends up being faster than Geralt, who I guess just wasn't chrono boosting it as much. But Geralt at least has, I guess, an Immortal on his side, so it's still very Stalker-heavy army. He's a little vulnerable to that. More and more, we might get more charge lots and Archons, though. And the Immortal does start to falter. The more charge lots come involved. And that's where Geralt would really want to have Archons, which he can make with his DTs, but I don't think that's what he's doing.
Oh,
that's right now.
That's a lot of DTs warped in by Gerald. And there is an Observer, I think, for Skillous.
Yeah,
it's at the back of the army. It's keeping it alive, and he has to keep it alive. Gerald, this is a scary fight by both of them. And Gerald, it looks like he's sort of hanging on here, but there's so much Skillous. Nice warp-ins by Skillous. I think he's macroing a little bit better in this one. Close supplies. The Warp Prism might come from Gerald is good, but Skillous, there's just too much left.
Yeah, the Warp Prism's gonna get taken out, which means the Immortal and the Archon got a couple more blasts, but they will fall as well. Geralt tried so hard to keep control of his 4th Nexus, but in doing so, he might just straight up lose the game, lose the 4th Nexus, lose your army, and then lose the game. Maybe if he got in the Warp Prism in turn, this could actually stall out, but the Warp Prism of Skillous is still warping in, and Geralt is not going to be taking a 2-0. That is a tied score.
Wow, this game was totally different to the first one in so many ways, but this game was far more what I had in mind of these two duking it out. I feel that Skillous is maybe a little bit faster, very killer instinct kind of thing. Gerald just seemed super duper well prepared and very, very calm. Like, this is where you pick 2 guys, and One of them, super calm, very methodical, and one guy's just, what do I do? What do I do? But it worked out very well for SKillous this game. Anyhow, guys, we're going to a short break, and we'll find out who wins this series.
Game number 3 is underway, actually. We're getting into it. SKillous versus Gerald. Tied up 1-1. Two vastly different games, as the Muslim was saying. So first game, pretty aggressive. And then second game was that kind of standard PvP macro into the hopefully decisive +2 attack, which was indeed decisive. SKillous ends up winning. In my eyes, a lot to do with those late DTs not being able to turn into Archons. We'll talk a bit more about it after the intros. In the top right, as the red Protoss, he is Gerald.
And over in the bottom left, as the blue Protoss, it is SKillous. As I was in the middle of saying his name, I was like, oh my god, I need to cough so hard.
Well, that happens. That's a pylon placement once again. You a fan of this now that you saw it in action?
I'm always down with a hipster pylon placement.
Okay, all right.
Like, if it is about getting that shield battery on the low ground, or, you know, there's also some madness behind it's better against potential cannon rushes, like it's mainly your pylon that's going to die as opposed to a gateway there, then I can get behind it.
Right, yeah. I'm not sure either one of these guys are cannon rushers, but I think SKillous is the type to actually throw one out occasionally, because SKillous has really been quite experimental with Protoss. I talked about it at the beginning of the series, where it felt like he was one of the first guys to just be like, nope, mass gateways. I'm not going to play around with this disruptor stuff. After the disruptors had really come into PvP meta again. And then we even saw a couple of really crazy games from SKillous in some of the online cups where he didn't even go for like the Stargate Void Ray stuff because the Void Ray was buffed, but rather just because he wanted to try it. So he was going into like super fast triple Stargate, fast carrier Tempest. He's actually just been really experimental, and sometimes that backfires. So I think, the first game going for ye old one-base PvP, that backfired. But second game is a little more proof that SKillous is just a really overall great PvP player. Coming with the Archons especially, where Gerald was just finishing the DT warp in. It's quite perfect timing. And he caught up on that +2, which is also pretty big. SKillous is just a well-rounded player who likes to mix it up occasionally.
It's funny when I see both of these guys. This is 3 games in a row. They've both started off with the same combo of units each time, which is double Stalker for SKillous and double Adept for Gerald, which, if you're a noob watching this and you're like, hey, what do I open up in PvP? Well, these two guys have very, very different answers for you for very different reasons. Like, we've seen Gerald with the 2 Adepts. He manages to get damage done. It's continuous scouting right from the get-go, and you get to 4 shield batteries constantly try and block that wall off, whereas SKillous starts off with a bit stockier of an army, given that Stalkers do tend to scale a bit better than Adepts. Ooh, that's a nice fast Nexus from SKillous.
Yeah, Gerald shouldn't be so far behind, but since Gerald added on 2 Stalkers, not Sentries, it is a little more expensive. And actually, SKillous blocks it.
I kind of like that block, actually. Like, I mean, he's going to buy time. The probe was sacrificed somewhat, but you get the information of what units are made next as well. I feel that so far this game is pretty decent for SKillous, even though it's, very small. Oh, yeah. Is this what you're all boying at?
Yep. Gerald gets denied his Nexus and is like, whatever, man. Didn't want it that fast anyways. Adds on a Twilight Council and hides what is can only be guessed is going to be a Dark Shrine. So Robos did come down like about as quick as you really want with this style of play last game, but they can honestly be delayed a lot more if you think you can get away with it. So now it's the question of like how much is SKillous to delay that Robo. This could be deadly. I feel like he shouldn't, just because this hallucination is going to get in and see some suspicious stuff. But I don't know. Link gets started. Forge is on the way.
Yeah, so, okay, in my head, I was like, okay, but he's making a Forge with this. This isn't that committed, but maybe he was also going full, 200 IQ, that he knows that a scout's going to come soon because he spotted the sentries with his Adepts, and he's got to make this look as normal as possible. So SKillous probably looked at that base and he's like, yeah, I can probably play, a normal macro game behind this, nothing crazy, nothing cheeky. So I actually like everything that Gerald's done here, because he's playing off the fact that SKillous is a very good player.
That's kind of the trick, right? Yeah, he's like so good of a player. He's picking up on these subtle cues, and they're kind of lies. So last game, we actually, I was gonna say SKillous and Gerald got a Robo around this time, and then there you go, it's coming. But the Dark Shrine is finishing. So Dark Templars warp in slowly. They get into the natural, and Observer's probably being built, but it isn't actually out at that point. And if SKillous goes for like an Immortal first for some unknown reason, which he really shouldn't, then that's even more trouble the DTs could cause.
I love the positioning of SKillous's units on his ramp here, given that if there is a blur coming at him, he can block. Oh, he's actually moved out of position. Okay, he still has energy for a force field, and these DTs then, okay, one by one. I think he spotted it. Yeah. I think he spotted it. And this wall-off is really cool by him, too.
I mean, the natural probes are still going to get hit. The Observer's going to be chronoed, though, and it will save most of the probes' lives. There you go. So, that I mean, it could have been a much bigger deal, but also for Geralt, it could have been a lot more committed, He could have put all of his eggs in the DT basket, and he didn't really. He started up his Blink, his +1. His own third Nexus at least started, although it is later. And he does still have DTs in his back pocket. They can come again later in PvP.
I was surprised that he stayed around for as long as he did. That was a nice blinks around to save one of those probes' lives by SKillous. But now if you're SKillous and you've held this off, that's definitely an army that can march out across the map. And with Blink, it's very mobile. +1 is finishing for both these players. Gerald, killing 5 probes is all well and good, but he's got to fend off Skillous now, I suppose.
Which he should be able to do. This one Immortal is actually super good at this particular moment, as charge lots aren't really involved. Charge has even started. So as long as that isn't out by itself, being focus fired, that should be king. Yeah, that Nexus isn't going to be bothered very much at all. Actually, almost grabs the Sentry. Does grab the Sentry. All right, 100 gas down the drain there for Skillous.
Again, everything that both these guys are doing is obviously good, you know? Gerald comes back in with that DT. There is a cannon waiting there now, which we'll be able to eventually deal with it, but not before the DT gets 3 probes, then runs away. Oh, and will stay alive too. Skillous, though, is not going to settle for what he's got done so far, which is practically nothing. Oh gosh, that's an Artosis and Tasteless pylon if I've ever seen one.
They're kind of buddying up, but it's not what he's going to go after anyways. The pylon, the right, is going to be depowering 2 of the gateways. Charge is actually just straight up cancel?
Is it? No. I'm not even sure. Did he have it started? I don't think
he,
so, but...
just did it, or maybe I was seeing Skillous's, but regardless, it wasn't depowered, so he should start up charge and +2 soon.
That observer there, it was like, oh, maybe he didn't see me, and just stayed there to get shot. That was amusing, but all said and done, like, Skillous wanted that to deal a lot more than it did. He does now have the probe lead, and he does actually have +2 way further along than Gerald, and it looks like Gerald, you know, he's got that kill switch engaged, so he is marching across the map. Skillous does get to see it coming.
So this is a pretty important moment. Gerald is purposefully pushing off those upgrades and trying to hit with just straight up more units before Skillous' upgrades are done. When Skillous has charge especially, it's going to get really difficult for Gerald to push past that, although he is using some of his DTs to turn at least into 1 Archon. The time is ticking. Skillous has shield batteries, defender's advantage. He is down in units, but shield battery can do wonders. Charge can do wonders, especially if Gerald's only going to have 1 Archon. And Gerald's also not feeling super confident about actually breaking his opponent, but if he doesn't, he is so far behind in those upgrades.
Yeah, he definitely is, and he's going back home, and he's like, all right, what do I do now? Start at +2, get my charge, get some extra gateways, and a 4th base. It was just very much a, plan B, I suppose, and this is the first time that I've seen Gerald, and it's almost an afterthought about what if this doesn't work? What if my opponent is more than prepared? Oh,
I think the Zealots, first of all, are doing some pretty good damage. But then second, I think that Skillous's blink into the main did more than just the damage that we saw. It really messed up Gerald's timing, which was supposed to probably hit as the Warp Prism was finishing. And then it finished, and he was still actually dealing with all the hop-up in his main. So that was a lot of good time buying from Skillous that might just go ahead and win him this game. +2 is an undeniably good upgrade to have, and as long as his arc isn't terrible, Skillous could win with this army.
He definitely could, and I tell you what's even better than +2, having charge against not having charge. And Gerald, he's in a fight that maybe he doesn't really want to be in. The Archons are at the back here. Skillous is the one that gets the big pounce. Blink in, charge lots in. Those are the saddest running away Zealots I've ever seen from Gerald, but he is sort of holding in there. He's got 3 Archons against 3 Archons, but Skillous is just chasing him down.
Yeah, this was an unfortunate start to the fight. So Gerald already down those upgrades, also had his Archons in the back, his Sentry with the Guardian Shield in front. Not at all what you want to have happen. He is trying desperately to hold on for this game 3, but it might be too much from Skillous. As the Warp Prism goes down, Gerald is down to just trying to use a shield battery, which actually he doesn't even have. It's actually at a 3rd base. A shield battery could have done wonders over here. But as it is, Skillous still has his Warp Prism, is still warping in, still looking to win this series. And I think he's got it. Whether he wins here or a couple of minutes from here, Skillous is definitely taking this game.
Oh, he certainly is. 30 supply ahead now. The Zealots are making magic happen, and this whole time, Gerald, look at that +2. It's still not even done. The charge was late, slow warping as well to top things off, and GG Skillous takes down Gerald 2-1.
That last game even could have been